Welcome back to MetalDisciple.com's The Week in Reviews. My name is George, and this week we had reviews from Crypt of Silence, Frozen Dawn, and Suffer Yourself. Last week I was poring over a list of new releases and saw the name Crypt of Silence. I thought that was a pretty cool sounding name, so I looked the band up on YouTube to try and hear them. After a brief listen, I started going back through all my promo emails, looking to see if I'd received anything from the band. Nada. I tried iTunes, but had no luck there either. I finally hit pay dirt at Bandcamp. For a mere $3.99, the album was mine. Crypt of Silence is a Ukrainian death doom band, and Beyond Shades is their recently released first album. While I was looking for the album, it was hard to find much of anything at all about the band, but sometime in the last few days, a page has popped up on the band over at the Metal Archives, so I was able to find some little bit of information. When I started listening to Beyond Shades, these guys had me before I even heard any vocals. Granted, the vocals don't show up until just after 5 minutes into the first song, but the music was so good that I wasn't going to care how the vocals sounded. Not that I had to worry, the vocals are really good too. For the most part, they tend toward impressive harsh vocals that sound like they should leave the guy's throat shredded, but he does some pretty impressive clean doom-style vocals as well. This was the clincher. Beautiful and melancholy metal music with very competent harsh and clean vocals. I am entirely sold on Crypt of Silence. I've been searching for a new album like this one, and now that I've found it, I'm going to be listening to this album incessantly for months. There are only 4 songs on Beyond Shades, but 2 of them are over 11 minutes long, 1 is over 12, and the final song is over 14 minutes. That means almost 50 minutes of music across 4 tracks. Nice. There are all kinds of great doom-style guitar pieces, both clean and distorted, long instrumental passages that will lull you into a relaxed and depressive state, and then BAM! The drums and harsh vocals will slam into you and shake you from your reverie. The mix of beauty and power is impressive. I like that the mix leaves all the different elements plenty of room to breathe. There's a feeling of big open spaces when listening to these songs with headphones. Seriously, if you are at all into doom or death doom, you need to check out Crypt of Silence. I really do love this album. This week I was on a roll with the Bandcamp artists. A few days ago I came across the Spanish black metal band Frozen Dawn and their second album, Those of the Cursed Light. As with Crypt of Silence, I saw Frozen Dawn on a list of new releases. I listened to a song on YouTube, and I immediately knew I wanted to hear more. I followed my usual method of operations when trying to track down an album. I first checked my email to see if I'd received a promo, then I checked iTunes and Amazon, and finally my old standby Bandcamp. More often than not lately, Bandcamp ends up having an obscure band that I'm looking for. I love that site. Aside from being able to find bands one doesn't find elsewhere, the cool thing about Bandcamp is that most of the albums on there are priced a couple of bucks below what you would pay at someplace like iTunes. I found Frozen Dawn on Bandcamp and bought a copy of Those of the Cursed Light. As I began listening to the album, I got more and more excited. Sometimes when I hear a cool song on YouTube, the rest of the album can't maintain the same level of quality. But such was not the case with Frozen Dawn. Front to back, Those of the Cursed Light is a solid album full of old-school style black metal with a slightly progressive and modern production. If I may borrow from the band's bio page, I think it does a great job of describing their sound. Frozen Dawn is a Spanish band that performs a cold, old-school black metal in the style of the first black metal bands that emerged during the 90s in Norway and Sweden. Its main influences are bands like Satyricon, Dissection, Dark Throne, Dark Fortress, Watain, and Necrophobic. I'm not as sure about the last few bands, but I really hear the Satyricon and Dissection influence, and I'd like to think that maybe some Emperor as well in there with the guitar playing. One of the things I like so much about Frozen Dawn's sound is that they utilize the traditional thin and cold sounding black metal production that doesn't use much low end. As a result, the songs have a sharp and cutting sound that I, for one, enjoy very much. However, they do not sacrifice production quality in attaining this sound. The songs are still very clear and well mixed with a bright presence that makes up for a lack of low-end punch. This takes the old-school sound and gives it a cleaner, more modern sound, and I wholeheartedly approve. The harsh vocal range doesn't really vary all that much, which might be an issue on a lesser release, but given how well the vocals slice through the music, and the fact that they just sound really good, I didn't find this to be a problem. The guitars are probably one of my favorite things about this album. At times, they use a very basic stripped-down 90s black metal style, which I've always liked, but they also do lots of those crazy fast melodic runs which are a staple of early black metal. Combine that playing with a nice crisp, clear production sound, and I am a happy man. Those of the Cursed Light makes me long for more albums in this style. I was very, very impressed by this release, and when I finished my first listen through, I went right back to Bandcamp and picked up their 2011 first album, The Old Prophecy of Winterland. The first album isn't quite as polished as those of the Cursed Light, but it is still far and away better than so many black metal albums I hear these days. Do yourself a favor, head over to Bandcamp and pick up both of these albums. If you enjoy classic black metal, you will not be disappointed. And finally, I complete this week's Bandcamp hat trick with a third album purchased from the site. This is the funeral doom band Suffer Yourself and their debut album, Inner Sanctum. The band originated in Poland, but apparently now call Ukraine home. I received a text message this week from my friend Buke telling me about this band. I looked them up and I gave them a listen. I was surprised to find they were funeral doom because Buke never seems to like any of the funeral doom bands that I mentioned to him. After hearing a short clip, I knew I wanted to get the album, so I started looking around for where I could buy it. I saw that iTunes had it for $9.99, but decided to check out Bandcamp first in case it was cheaper. Turns out I was able to pick up the album on Bandcamp for a mere $5. So let me get this straight. That's $10 for 256K quality, or $5 for 320K? Once again, Bandcamp, I sing thy praises. So I downloaded the album, put it on my phone, and started to give it a listen. I certainly understand the funeral doom label. It really is probably the most suitable description, though most of the funeral doom I listen to is usually even slower and thicker sounding than this. And were those some clean vocals I heard? Technically, these songs probably fall somewhere in that murky territory between funeral and death doom, but I'm not going to split hairs that finely. We'll just go with funeral doom. For fans of funeral doom, you basically know what to expect. The songs are pretty slow, the riffs are thunderously heavy, and the vocals, when not clean, are deep and gravelly. When trying to describe funeral doom, I'd like to describe it as the sound made by glaciers slowly creeping across the land. Dark, evil glaciers. Suffer Yourself is just a wee bit too fast to warrant that description, but they still aren't going to win any speed competitions. Those clean vocals I mentioned are a bit unusual for funeral doom, but I can't say I'm not enjoying them. They really bring in a more traditional doom element that revives the sound and renews interest at a time in the album when listeners might start to zone out. When you have long songs like these, which are typical of funeral doom, it's nice to have a drastic change to force one's attention back toward what is going on. Like most funeral doom albums, the songs are long, which means you get fewer of them. In this case, there are 5 tracks that run almost 54 minutes. While the music is dark and ominous, the production is pretty sharp and clear most of the time. When it isn't, it's because of the thick air of despondency that enshrouds certain passages. Overall, this is a great sounding album. I know this album is probably a bit of an acquired taste for most metal fans, but I encourage you all to give it a listen. Alright, that's it for this week. Make sure to check out MetalDisciple.com for more reviews and videos. Take it easy.